All right, buckle up, because this deep dive is going to hit you right in the feels. We're talking family drama, the kind that makes your average holiday gathering look like a walk in the park. Jealousy, power struggles, even a little sheep breeding strategy. Genesis chapter 30 has it all.
And we're not just talking about any family here. This is Jacob, patriarch, the one who wrestled with God. We're about to see how his past choices explode in the lives of his wives, Leah and Rachel. Talk about a legacy.
You know that saying, family. Can't live with them, can't inherit the promised land without them. Something like that.
Pretty much.
We're going deep into Genesis 30 with insights from my Christian space, and let me tell you, they don't sugarcoat it. We're confronting those power dynamics head on, especially what it meant for women then to bear children or not. Talk about pressure.
Try to imagine your worth, your security, your entire future riding on whether you have sons. It was a pressure cooker, no doubt.
Which brings us to Rachel's desperation. When she cries out, "Give me children or I will die." I mean, wow, verse 2, it's easy to think she's being a little dramatic.
Oh, but it was her reality.
Right. It wasn't just some emotional outburst. It's the ancient world. Infertility wasn't just like a personal struggle.
Huge social implications. It meant vulnerability, no safety net.
Exactly. So she makes a bold move, one that would definitely raise eyebrows today. She gives her maidservant, Bilhah, to Jacob.
Let's just say an alternative path to motherhood.
Putting it mildly. And it shows how complex these family structures were.
It gets messy, even back then.
And morally complicated. We can't ignore that. But it was within their social norms, even if it created this whole web of, well...
relationships and obligations. And don't forget Leah, watching all this unfold. Remember, she's the one Jacob was tricked into marrying.
Right, Rachel was the beloved wife. So when Bilhah has two sons, Dan and Naphtali, you can bet Rachel sees it as a win in this unspoken competition.
Absolutely. The text even uses the word wrestled about Naphtali's birth. It emphasizes how much Rachel fought for this, a victory over her sister.
But Leah, she's no pushover. She does the same thing, offering her maidservant Zilpah to Jacob. Now they have Gad and Asher, and suddenly we're talking 4 sons outside the traditional marriage.
Makes you wonder about Leah's motivations, right? Is it just about more children, or is there an element of rivalry?
Yeah.
Of trying to secure her own place because she knows where Jacob's heart truly lies?
Totally. Like this pressure cooker situation just keeps getting more intense, and then we hit this seemingly insignificant detail, easy to miss, but man, it speaks volumes.
The Mandrake incident.
Right. Easy to skim over, but it's key to understanding what's going on between these two women.
Okay.
For those of us who aren't ancient botany experts, what's the big deal with these mandrakes anyway?
Back then, they were believed to, enhance fertility, almost magical properties. So when Leah's son brings some home, Rachel sees an opportunity.
And she pounces. She basically bargains with Leah, trading her turn, marital privileges for those mandrakes. Can you imagine?
And Leah's response is heartbreaking. She says, "Isn't it enough that you've taken away my husband?" You feel the resentment, the pain simmering under the surface.
Totally. She's like, I've already lost his love. Now I'm losing this too.
Exactly.
So thanks to the mandrakes, or maybe just fate, Leah gets pregnant again, gives birth to 2 more sons, Issachar and Zebulun. Just when you think she's done, she has a daughter, Danae, and then just when you think the score is settled in this family.
Everything shifts. After years of waiting, of trying everything, of seeing her sister have child after child, God remembers Rachel.
And that word remembers, it's loaded.
Totally. God didn't just suddenly recall something he'd forgotten. It connects back to the covenant with Abraham, reminding us that this isn't just family drama. It's part of this much bigger divine plan.
So Rachel finally has her son, Joseph, and you can feel the relief, the joy. She even says, "May the Lord add to me another son," which, knowing this family, maybe not the best idea, but...
It shows what motherhood meant to her.
Absolutely. And the birth of Joseph, it's a turning point. Jacob, he's got his big family, feels God's blessing, and he decides it's time to head back home.
Back to his homeland.
Right. Think about it. He arrived in this foreign land, alone, running from his brother. Now he's leaving with 2 wives, a whole team of kids, servants, livestock.
He's built a house, a lineage. The seeds of leadership and legacy are planted.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Except for one tiny problem. Well, actually, a huge problem. Lavan.
Ah, Lavan. The father-in-law who's not exactly known for his generosity.
Yeah.
And let's just say he is not happy about Jacob's exit strategy.
Not one bit. You see, Lavan's benefited from Jacob's presence. He's witnessed those blessings, how Jacob's flocks have prospered.
So naturally, he doesn't want to let that go.
Not without a fight.
He basically pulls out all the stops to get Jacob to stay, offers him a raise, tries to sweeten the deal, but Jacob, he's got his sights set on something bigger.
He's not just looking for a bigger paycheck.
Right. He wants more than just a golden handshake.
Mm.
So what does he do? He proposes something so out there, so audacious, it's almost genius.
This is classic Jacob.
Oh yeah, the guy knows how to make a deal. He tells Lavan, okay, I'll keep working for you, but forget the regular wages. I want livestock.
But not just any livestock.
Oh no, this is where it gets interesting. He's after specific animals, sheep and goats, born with unusual markings.
We're talking speckled, spotted, even brown.
Yeah. Now at first glance, you might think Lavan's getting the better end of this deal. I mean, how many sheep are really going to be born with those specific markings?
Exactly. Lavan thinks he's being clever, assumes these oddly colored animals are rare, figures Jacob's basically asking for, like, the scraps.
But Jacob, he's not just some random shepherd, right?
Oh, he's got a history.
That's an understatement. Remember that whole birthright situation with Esau? And my Christian space even hints he might have had a little divine inspiration on his side for this deal, too.
Things get a little vague here, but it seems Jacob used some, let's say, specially prepared branches to influence the colors of the offspring.
Okay, now we're getting into some next-level sheep breeding here. What kind of branches are we talking about? I need details.
The text mentions poplar, almond, and plane trees.
Okay.
He peels off the bark to reveal the white underneath, then places these branches in the watering troughs where the animals,
Get busy. So we're talking ancient sheep hypnosis. Subliminal messaging.
It does sound a little out there, right? It's one of those things where the Bible doesn't give us all the how-to details, but what's important is the outcome. Jacob's flocks, the ones he's carefully cultivated, they thrive.
They're like the MVPs of the ancient livestock world.
Mm.
And Lavan's flocks,
Let's just say, not doing so well.
not so much. Which honestly feels a little bit like karma, right? But there's this even more interesting detail. Apparently the Hebrew word for white is Lavan.
Yep. Poetic justice, isn't it?
Totally. Like Jacob, by using these white-streaked branches, is sort of outsmarting Lavan right under his nose.
It's like he's marking his success with Lavan's own name.
Right. It's like, see, I'm playing the long game here, Lavan. But it's easy to get caught up in all this sheep drama and forget we've got a whole next generation growing up here.
We're talking about the future 12 tribes of Israel. This is huge.
Not just your average kids.
Mm.
And my Christian space makes a great point. Every birth brought its own set of hopes, anxieties. I mean, think about Rachel and Joseph. Even his name, it means addition.
Which speaks volumes about her longing for more children, security.
It all circles back to that pressure we talked about. Having lots of sons, especially sons who could inherit land, carry on the family line that was the ancient world's version of winning the lottery.
It was a sign of God's favor, for sure, but also a practical way to ensure your family's survival in a world without, retirement plans and safety nets.
Exactly. But here's the thing. All this family building, this blessing, it's happening on someone else's turf. They're still living in Lavan's territory.
Remember that covenant. The promised land.
Right. It's supposed to go to Abraham's descendants, but they're still living like, well, migrants.
Temporary residents.
Exactly. And that longing for home, for their rightful place, it's what fuels Jacob's decision to leave. He knows it's time to take what God promised, even if it means going head-to-head with Lavan.
And that's where we leave them.
Talk about a cliffhanger. Jacob's packed up, ready to face his father-in-law. Tensions are high. Flocks are multiplying. I cannot wait to see what happens next. It's amazing what you can pack into a single chapter, right?
Tell me about it.
We had family drama, like the kind that makes you want to hide under the table at Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, times 10.
We've got complicated marriages, sibling rivalry that spans generations, even a little sheep breeding magic for good measure. And it's all happening with this huge divine covenant as the backdrop.
It's easy to get so caught up in the drama that you miss the bigger picture, though.
Oh, absolutely. But through all the ups and downs, all the twists and turns, there's this constant reminder that God is working. Even when it seems messy, even when it feels unfair.
It's like that old saying, God works in mysterious ways.
Right. And sometimes those ways involve livestock.
Hey, you never know. But speaking of God's mysterious ways, think about Rachel's story for a second. Years of infertility, years of feeling that social stigma, that emotional weight. And then just when things seem hopeless, God remembers her.
That word always gets me, every time. Remember it.
Loaded. Right.
It's not just that God suddenly jotted down a Post-it note like, don't forget Rachel.
I almost missed that one. No, it's this powerful reminder that even when we feel forgotten, overlooked, like we're at the bottom of God's to-do list.
He sees us.
He sees us.
Yeah.
And he's working behind the scenes in ways we may never fully understand to fulfill his promises.
And that's what makes these stories resonate even today, right? This isn't just some ancient history we're digging up. This is about real people, real emotions. They faced infertility, family dysfunction, ambition, betrayal. It's all still so relatable.
And what's amazing is that the Bible doesn't shy away from the messiness of it all. These aren't perfect people. They make mistakes, they act out of jealousy, fear, but God can still use them.
To do extraordinary things. And it's encouraging, isn't it?
Huge encouragement.
For those of us who, haven't quite achieved that whole wrestling with angels level of spirituality.
Or maybe haven't mastered the art of strategic sheep breeding.
Right. Maybe our lives are a little more mundane.
Yeah.
But God can still use us, flaws and all.
Absolutely. This chapter is like this big, reassuring hug from God that says, I can work with this. You're imperfect. Life is messy, but I'm in the business of making all things new.
I love that. And speaking of new beginnings, we left Jacob at a pretty crucial point in his journey. He's packed up his family, rounded up those speckled flocks, and he's about to have it out with Lavan.
Talk about a family reunion.
Right. Stakes are high.
Yeah.
And it really makes you think, what would you do in that situation? How far would you go to protect your family, your future, to pursue what you believe is God's calling on your life?
It's a question for all of us, isn't it? Because even though most of us won't have to negotiate with a grumpy father-in-law over livestock,
we will face our own challenges, our own Lavan moments.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Genesis chapter 30, remember this. God is at work, even when life feels like a chaotic whirlwind of family drama and sheep negotiations. And in those messy, complicated stories, we catch glimpses of his faithfulness, his grace, and his incredible ability to weave beauty from the most unlikely circumstances.
Beautifully said. And maybe, just maybe, if we're paying attention, we might learn a thing or two about sheep breeding along the way. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time.